There's a pastor whose name is very difficult to pronounce. Pastor John Amachugukwa. I'll try it. You'll hear it done the right way in a second. Now, I want to be clear-eyed on what this guy's doing. First of all, he is defending the Word of God. He is defending school children from being forced to read pornographic content. He is confronting school boards who are perverting the minds of kids with sexual content that does not belong in schools. He's been called the book-banning pastor, and he's proud of that phrase, even though he's never banned a book. There has never been a book banned in America of recent times. I mean, it's happened, but not recent times. Certainly not the sexually explicit books that are being pushed into school libraries. Those are not being banned. If every single government school library in the world said, we're not going to have sexual books in our libraries, they wouldn't be banned. They simply wouldn't be there. There's this thing called curating. And this is one of the ways you can push back on people who make the claim of book banning. Now, I gave that background on this pastor because there's some other details to this story that matter. I'll give that to you in just a second. He was put in handcuffs. And part of that was because he was defending a young girl named Lorena Benson, who was forced to read pornographic content in front of fellow students, forced by a teacher to do that, by an adult. So the details matter, and what he's doing matters, but so does the comparison we'll make between the unhealthy form of so-called teaching and the healthy form. There's some other comparisons you can make pretty simply on topic of health versus unhealthy. If the conclusion for you when you walk into a doctor's office is already known, it's already known. You're sitting in the lobby. You are ready to go in and meet with the doctor, explain your condition, and sitting back there in a laptop connected to a database is already a series of answers. Will it be this drug, that drug, or this surgery? And as you explain your symptoms, you'll notice doctors these days are right there on their iPad. And here's often what's going on. They're listening to you, and in the background, this is software searching a Medicare and Medicaid database or your own insurance company's database, and it's looking for things they could do for you that day, pretend to do for you. It's called claim mining. Now, you may not need these things, but they don't really care because it's money. So it might come across that your doctor says, hey, have you considered a statin? Did you know that you qualify for a discount on statins? Or you might be in there in severe pain, maybe something like neuropathy, where your fingers are numb and they tingle and you get these shooting arms through your pain through your arms, or carpal tunnel. Maybe you've had a serious injury and it's just not recovered and you just can't move your back the right way, and maybe you can't do the things you love anymore. Well, it goes into that database, this pill, that surgery. Or you could go get an interview with my friends at Renew.Healthcare. Go to Renew.Healthcare, and they will tell you if they're ethically gathered stem cells that come from umbilical cords and placebos only, never anything to do with aborted babies ever, if those could help you. How would they help you? Number one, it would reduce inflammation. Number two, where there's tissue damaged, maybe there's cartilage gone, maybe you're bone on bone, it rebuilds the tissue, including cartilage, muscle, tendons. And it does that without the use of drugs. Stem cells happen by nature. This is simply gathering them, culturing them, and putting them into your body. In my case, twice I've had it done by a Harvard-certified surgeon. Go to Renew.Healthcare. That's RENUE.Healthcare. So this pastor apparently goes around the country and he goes and confronts these school boards. And at this point, this detail does matter. He decided to not sit down after his allotted speaking time was over. Now, that allotted speaking time, that is sort of an obnoxious thing in a so-called Republican democracy or Republican form of democracy, because the school board gets to decide what that is. You citizens only need 3 minutes. We can't all sit here all night and listen to you. We have important things to do, like to speak to you, to tell you what you're to think. It is the false limit put on us. And oftentimes, it is becoming more and more absurd. Like in the state of California, they limited debate on a bill to something like 10 seconds. Why? Because they don't want debate. This is how WRAL reported this.
A pastor disrupted a Wake County School Board meeting, calling out district leaders and refusing to leave. This comes after a high school student told the board that she was uncomfortable reading and discussing a passage in class that she described as incestual. The Bureau's Destiny Patterson explains.
Say her name. Justice for Lorena Benson. I can't, sir.
At this point,
sir,
I must instruct you to leave.
Sir.
Vocal about his conservative views, Pastor John Amanchukwu challenges school boards across the country.
You are breaking the law.
He refused to leave the podium after his 3 minutes for public comment were up during the Wake County School Board meeting.
You should be removed.
The school board chairman called it a publicity stunt. It all started with this short story. An Athens high school student told school board members a couple weeks ago she felt uncomfortable by a passage that made reference to sex and incest. She left the school a week later.
This graphic, ancestral sexual language should not be taught in any class, much less an honors English class.
Lorena Benson's father, Bruce Benson, agrees.
There's thousands and thousands of great books that could be taught to kids. Why does the school system and the teachers have to go out of their way to teach content that is so clearly over the line?
The 15-year-old says her family moved to North Carolina from the Dominican Republic a few months ago.
I am deeply bothered and deeply disappointed.
District officials declined an on-camera interview, citing privacy laws for students and personnel. However, they say they're evaluating the appropriateness of the assignment. Destiny Patterson, WRAL News, Wake County.
Quoting privacy of district personnel working in a public school. That phrase is an interesting phrase, isn't it? Public. But they need to maintain the privacy in a public school that you run with your money. There's a lot of ways to talk about this. This is footage, if you're watching the video of the pastor being arrested. There's a lot of ways to talk about something like this, but here's a way to view it a little bit differently. If you came home, walked into your house, and your neighbor, let's call him Jimmy Bobby. Jimmy Bobby was sitting on the couch with your 15-year-old daughter. And Jimmy Bobby had your 15-year-old daughter reading him sexual content. How long would Jimmy Bobby live? I mean, I don't want to be a man of the flesh, and I don't want to give in to that instinct for doing things that way, to dealing with things that way. But honest to goodness, if you saw that happening in your home with Jimmy Bobby on the couch, making your daughter read him sexual content, your response would be what? You'd want Jimmy Bobby arrested. But these are teachers. A very simple way to confront people who call this book banning. Ask them this. Is every single book in the world available in all government schools? They have to say no, unless they're completely ignorant of physics. There's not enough room in any government school for every single book in the world. We're not talking about censorship, we're talking about curation. And so what belongs there? If only there was a way to have a method to say what belongs in schools. Well, that would mean that you'd have to have a mission for schools. What is the mission for a school? Reading and writing and arithmetic is what it used to be, all wrapped up in this: teaching kids how to think, not what to think. Research like this, little stories like this, sexual stories like this, sexual content like this is not just teaching kids what to think. It's teaching them how to feel at inappropriate ages. You can track the mind of kids, the brains of kids, the brains of all of us. There's a window in time where we can pick up languages very, very easily. I wish I'd done this with my daughter that taught her a foreign language, because kids who learn multiple foreign languages, you know what else they can do? They can pick up computer coding really, really easy because it's just language. And then those portions of the brain close. And it becomes harder for us to pick up new languages or new skills. It closes. As you age, things like neuroadaptation under physical stress becomes harder. Learning new movements, new gymnastics movements becomes harder. God also designed our brains to be ready for certain sort of stimuli at certain ages, and kids are not ready for sexual stimuli because they do not have the maturity to handle what comes with sexual stimuli, which is this: wise decisions about with whom you engage in such activity. But they do have the gift of the creep factor. Gavin Newsom's great book, The Gift of Fear, teaches kids that not all strangers are dangerous. It teaches adults that not all strangers are dangerous. But when you have a feeling in your gut that, Jimmy Bobby's a creep. My parents aren't home and Jimmy Bobby wants me to read this sex book to him on the couch. This doesn't seem right. If it doesn't seem right, it usually isn't right. What's happening in schools is robbing kids of that God-given gift of fear of creeps. That's not something that should be taken from them.